Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind, our 84th episode. We are a little late this week, but who cares? We are back. We've been very busy. Niles, how have you been the last 2-ish weeks since our previous episode?
Been doing well. Helped out with my family moving some stuff around their house the other weekend, which is always a fun time. You know, just rearranging furniture so that way we can refinish the floors. It's very labor intensive, but it was fun to reconnect with family, and been good. Otherwise, it's been, I feel like, just April. It's busy, but I'm happy that it's finally spring in Colorado too. How about you, Dylan? How are you?
Oh yeah, doing all right. Just busy with work and the like, and trying to get back in shape. Do some more aerobic exercise, be outside now that it's nice again, and it's that wonderful time of year where it's starting to get warm in Colorado, but the building hasn't flipped the air conditioning back on for the year, so I'm just cooking in my apartment now.
Love that. Yeah. Well, and we're due any day for one extra snowstorm, I'm sure. So we're not out of it just yet. We're almost there, I'm sure.
Dude, the spring, if you're not from Colorado or a place like it, the spring snows are so annoying. It's like a beautiful day, and then it's like, surprise, 15 degrees and a blizzard.
Right. Yeah. It's just, come on, get your shit together. But we're not here to talk about the weather today.
No,
we're here to talk about Halo.
Yes, Niles, you want to kick us off with a little description?
Halo. We're talking about the TV series today. Halo is based on the Halo video game series that takes place in the 26th century. It follows Master Chief and his team of Spartans, which are cybernetically enhanced super soldiers, in their fight against the Covenant, a superior alien force.
Yeah, the series, the TV show, stars Pablo Schreiber, Kate Kennedy, Natasha McCone, Natasha Kulsak, Charlie Murphy, Yaren Ha, Joseph Morgan, Bokeem Woodbine, Christina Rodlow, Jen Taylor, and many, many others. Niles, what are your initial thoughts on Season 2 of Halo?
Yeah. Well, just to set the scene first, I wanted to say that I've played the first 3 Halo games to death. Definitely played the third one a lot more than the others. And I also played through Halo 4. I remember doing that, and I played some Infinite. I don't think I did Halo 5, but also played Reach to death and Halo Wars a ton, too. So that's the context I'm coming in.
I guess we should give our bona fides, shouldn't we? Similar to you, I've played all of the Halo games, and most of them multiple times, and played Halo Wars and half of Halo Wars 2. I love the entire Bungie era, definitely, and I am a Halo 4 campaign defender. The multiplayer is bad, but the campaign I think is quite good. Halo 5 is atrocious. It's truly awful. And then Halo Infinite is just kind of fine. Narratively, the gameplay is pretty solid, but the narrative and the level design leave quite a lot to be desired. But those are sort of our bona fides and relationship with the series. And I think both of us have been fans of Halo for about 20 years, right? Almost the entire time it's existed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely wasn't on board from the get-go, but it was kind of my brother, I think, who pushed our family into getting an Xbox, and I'm so glad that he did, because that was kind of our way to get into Halo and start exploring that a little bit more. And it's honestly such a rich and powerful story. It's very dynamic. There's lots of facets to it with religious zealotism and just military expansion. It just feels like some of it is a critique of the military-industrial complex too. With these Spartan characters. But love the games to death. I think those first 3 and Reach also. Oh, and I forgot about ODST.
ODST,
that one too, which is so solid. But all those 5 games are just amazing, and they just hold such a special place in my heart. I don't really feel the same way about the other ones, but those 4 or 5-ish ones are just incredible. So I was really hoping that the Halo TV show was going to emulate a lot of those games, or at least the best parts of the games. And I think it did fall short a little bit here. And I don't want to come off sounding too negative, because I think there are a lot of great elements in this show, and there's definitely some parts that I enjoy. It's just difficult for me to get over some of those missteps and some of those mistakes throughout it. And we'll get a lot into it in the spoilers as well here, but I feel like the show, it disrespects the lore, or it just ignores it, really. It just kind of goes its own way. Like the lore that's established in the games, it just feels like it introduces some things at the wrong time and place. It kills off characters at the wrong moments, for me, and that is, mainly informed by the games for me. That's kind of my Bible when I'm coming into an analysis of this show.
Yeah. So I'll say, like, oh, and I forgot to mention, I've seen the marketing tie-in films for Halo 4 and 5 too. I don't remember if you.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if you remember those things, but I watched those as well. Like, and I think that's important to note for this review. Like, both of us are kind of mega fans of this series. We are not the brand of mega fan who's like read all the books and stuff like that. I don't really care about those. I'm sure some of them are great. No disrespect, if that's your thing, fine. But I think this is a marginal improvement over the first season, but it's still... I find it weird that they said leading up that they learned from a lot of their mistakes in Season 1, because I don't think they did, because the Season 2 has, I think, all of the same issues that Season 1 has. And there are a handful of bright moments, mostly action scenes, but I still find myself not connecting with the majority of the characters, and I think the show rarely feels like Halo. I saw someone say online that this show feels less like a Halo adaptation and more like a cheap imitation of the Mass Effect series, and I kind of agree. It's especially some of the stuff centered around Master Chief feels like Halo. Some, not all, but anything relating to like Soren or Quan Ha or any of the other like side characters who have their own different stories going on, it's like that feels like shitty Mass Effect, not Halo. And we'll talk more about all that in spoilers, but at this point, I wouldn't even call this an adaptation of Halo. It's a reinterpretation, and I think that reinterpretation does not strike at the core of what makes Halo good. Like we've talked about many times on this show, it's okay to change things. In fact, sometimes it's necessary to change things in adaptation, because things that work in one medium don't work in another. But the key to a good adaptation is like striking at the core of what made the original thing work. You have to understand why the first thing worked to adapt that to the new medium. And I don't think this show gets what made Halo work at all. I think it totally misses the mark in most meaningful ways. And I have some positives, and I'll talk about them later.
Yes.
I will say I think Pablo Schreiber does a good job with this version of Chief. He's nothing like Chief from the games, but the material he's given, he executes fine.
And I think his delivery, he does kind of sound like Chief, like how Chief would speak without the helmet on and everything. So I think he did a great job. I do think that some of the acting throughout, it's not just him. I think it's kind of across the board. It's a little stiff and wooden sometimes. My partner made a good observation watching over my shoulder on one episode. She was like, no one ever moves their eyebrows in this show. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. They're all incredibly serious all the time. It's very odd, and we'll talk more about it later on, but I think a lot of problems with what the show chooses to focus on come from budget necessities. I think there is probably a limitation that they cannot have the Covenant on screen all that much because they're fucking expensive and they're all aliens. And I think that might also be part of the reason why the Spartans are not in armor as much as we as Halo fans may like to see, because I think a lot of their action is CGI models rather than dudes in armor. I don't know that for a fact, but I would suspect that is part of the reason. But
in summary, for non-spoilers for me, like, I'm not really sure I can recommend this show, and I'm honestly not sure who it's for. Because as huge Halo fans, I don't think it's for us, but I don't think it's like good enough as a sci-fi show to be for anybody else. So I'm not really, I don't know who this is for.
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted on it too, because I think the best parts of the show are the action sequences and the visual designs. Like, I think the UNSC looks awesome. I think the Covenant creatures look amazing. But yeah, you're right. It's a lot of money to generate those models and stuff like that. Like, the most beautiful parts are where they put all the money in, and it shows. And yeah, it is kind of tough for me to recommend this show too. If you're familiar with the story and you want something new in Halo, you want to approach it in a different view, sure, check it out. But I don't think that you should be like jumping over the moon to go check out this show. Like, I'm a little confused who it's made for as well, Dylan.
It does seem to have its fans. I've seen some people like going to bat for it online, which I find confusing. It's kind of a trend I've seen more and more lately. Just like people who are ride or die for some like mediocre but okay stuff. I'm gonna dive deeper into that later on. I think it's an interesting topic to explore. But
sure.
And like I guess it like someone who's listening to this or watching this could probably reasonably ask us. It's like, y'all didn't like the first season. You don't like this season. Why did you even watch this? Why are you doing an episode on it? It's because I think for me, it's like I want it to be good, and there are parts of it that are salvageable. Like they've like shot themselves in the foot a little bit by taking away some key ingredients from the story, but like this can be something good. I just don't think it is there yet. And if they actually learn their lessons, then it could be good. But that's why, like, we never make an episode on something just to dunk on it, and that's not what we're trying to do here. But I think, we want to like it.
Yeah. There's value in, kind of dissecting things like this. We've talked about different video game adaptations before, and ones that we think are really well or hit the mark, like Last of Us or Arcane. Those are phenomenal video game adaptations. But, when you're adapting something like this that has such a cult following,
I wouldn't even say cult. It used to be like one of the biggest IPs in gaming.
Yeah, right. Like, you need to be very intentional about what you're adapting and how you're approaching it. And yeah, I agree. If they're going to do another season, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this one and the first season to improve the third season, which I think could have the potential to be pretty good. Just got to get there.
Yeah. And I love that you said intentional about adapting. It's not about fidelity of adaptation, right? It's not about sticking as closely to the games as possible. Sometimes it is. That can be cool. But it's like, if you're going to change something, be intentional about it. Be making that change for a reason. It needs to be motivated by something creative. And I feel like a lot of this, by necessity, is motivated by budget. But also a lot of the changes are confusing. And we'll talk about that more in spoilers. And I don't know if you have any more non-spoiler thoughts, but we can transition over if not.
Yeah, let's transition over. Okay. Why not?
All right, so
into our full discussion here.
Yeah. So season 2 of Halo. Yeah. Season 2 of Halo sort of doesn't pick up where season 1 left off. Chief is no longer controlled by Cortana. McKee is alive again somehow. Quan Ha is a slave or something. And Halsey is captured. She was on the run at the end of last season, and now she's captured. The Covenant is up to some shady stuff again, but we aren't sure what. The Fall of Reach happens, and they discover Halo through a confusing series of events related to espionage. And the thing I wanted to kick off this section with is, what is, in the universe of the show, the significance of Master Chief? Because in the games, I understand why people talk about him with a sense of awe, right, and see him as important. He's a proven war hero. He's the last Spartan, and I guess he's kind of humanity's best hope, and he's just like a symbol of humanity's fight, right? And that's partially a symptom of the game storyline taking place in the last year or so of the war. Like, this has been going on for a long time. So I get that. But and also Master Chief Petty Officer is his military rank. Master Chief becomes his name and a moniker because it's just like he's the chief in the games. But in the show, what is it supposed to mean when someone like Spartan Kai responds to like Ackerson questioning her about Chief's legitimacy by being like, he's the chief, you know? Like, I understand he's kind of a propaganda symbol for the UNSC, but I also don't understand why. That whole element feels weird just because of the relationship they have with him. So I want your thoughts on this too, because I'm like, in universe, what the fuck does he's the chief mean?
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I think because in the games, he's definitely more of this like this icon. He's this hardened, badass soldier, you know, and that comes across very clearly. He's the last of his kind. It's they're very intentional about framing him as this very stoic, heroic figure. But yeah, in the show, it's like it's a little more ambiguous, especially since there's other Spartans that are still alive. It's like, why don't they have these kinds of special monikers?
Exactly.
You know, these special code names. It's just like, yeah, why isn't Kai like Master Chief Tress? You know, like, or whatever it would be. That was a terrible idea.
That was
was
awful. Yeah. But
it was bad.
Yeah, but in the games, it's like this is communicated. This is storytelling through the gameplay of the games. It's like when you, the player, are playing as Master Chief and you arrive on a combat scenario, you are single-handedly turning the tide of that encounter. The Marines are always overwhelmed if you're not there, and sometimes even if you are there, they all fucking die. But you survive. Yeah. You're able to kill everything there, and so you're able to feel Chief's like impact on the war through the gameplay, and that's not something he can do in this story, which I think works fine. He doesn't need to be as overpowered as the video game version. That would be kind of boring.
Yeah,
but
it adds stakes.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember the showrunner leading up to this season, or maybe it was during. I started watching a little late, but they made a comment about how John would be like struggling between his own identity and the identity of the Master Chief, or something like that. And it's just a very odd angle to take here for this character, because it's like, it's just his fucking rank, and it's a mask he puts on. It's like a suit of armor. It's not like, it's not like a superhero secret identity or something. He's just a fucking soldier. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, but everyone knows his name. They know his name's John, his call sign, and everything like that. But yeah, I think his image, it definitely feels like a marketing tool for military recruitment, for propaganda, which I think does add like a layer of complexity to the story, which I appreciate. Kind of illustrates that the UNSC's kind of a little bit more morally gray in some respects. I feel like in the games, as the series goes on, it gets a little bit clearer that the UNSC is not as good as you think that they are. But, I think for the most part, they're positioned in a very positive light in the games, because you're fighting for humanity. They're your kind of last hope. And the show did take a big swing here of adding more political intrigue to the mix in the show. And I do think that Master Chief's image is a central part of that conversation. Yeah. So
Yeah, and sorry. And it's like in the games, you're right. At least in the original games, the UNSC is very much like the good guys. But then in ODST and a little bit in Reach and Halo 4, and I think it mostly in the broader lore that we don't really dive into, but have picked up through osmosis or whatever, UNSC is more morally gray and sometimes just bad. And that's a big part of the lore, but the games focus on a point of time where humanity's back is against the wall, and so it's kind of like we're all in this together sort of thing, which I think is an interesting layer that the show wisely builds upon. But I do think, more so in Season 1, actually, I think they leaned too far into the UNSC being, like, awful for it to be our main, like, point of view faction, you know what I mean? But yeah, and I actually fucking forgot that Guilty Spark was in Season 2 of this show. So could you remind me what his conversation with Chief is about?
Yeah, you got it. It's in the finale. It's the only the only scene, like time that he's in it, there's like a little bit of conversation that they have at the start of the episode, and then at the end of the episode, kind of like full circle kind of conversation in a way. But he has this. It is confusing about why Guilty Spark is talking to Chief and then McKee, or vice versa. It's like, why aren't you talking to them at the same time? But whatever, who cares? But he's like asking him some questions, and it's eventually Chief is like, well, I took my armor back. Like, I did all this stuff because I wanted to reclaim my image. It's mine. And they were taking the Master Chief from me. And it was like, it's a little confusing, but I think that kind of speaks to what you were talking about, the showrunner, that the Master Chief, he's trying to grapple with his identity and the expectations of himself. But like, it's, I don't know. I think it could have been handled with better finesse.
Yeah. And this is something that I've found, because I made a video about Halo 4's story several years ago now, and I think the way Halo 4 handles Chief's character is very interesting because he is grappling with his humanity in that game, and there's a big part of it is how his dynamic with Cortana and how he's human and she's a machine, but she, in a lot of ways, is more human than he is, as he's just like a machine of war, and he's kind of reckoning with that, and I found that very interesting. But why I think that works and this doesn't is Chief's arc in Halo 4 works because of the time we've already spent with him, and we've seen him as this sort of man of few words who just kind of kills everything that the UNSC tells him to for 3 whole games. And now in 4, the war is over. It's, there is a war of sorts in Halo 4, but it's like his purpose has been fulfilled, and now he has to reckon with who he is as a person when that war is not there to define him. And I don't think this struggle for humanity works as well with Chief here because it's not playing off of anything. Like, it's not speaking to any past dynamic we've seen him have. And we don't really get much insight into, who he is as a soldier before he starts questioning all of this stuff. So that's one thing that doesn't really work for me, but this is the most confusing decision in the show for me, and it's the decision to have basically every character in the UNSC and in a position of authority questioning Chief's loyalty and sanity like the entire time. Yeah. It might just be personal preference, but this is not something I would do with this character specifically. Yeah. It's just not an ingredient of Master Chief. And I mentioned this earlier in regards to budget, but I have a feeling that this story element is here so that there can be more conflict between the human characters, as the show's budget does not allow for the Covenant to be on screen all that much. And I think the budget may be the culprit for a lot of the weird choices in this series, but I think being unable to show the Covenant on screen that much is actually a really big fucking problem for a Halo show. They're the main antagonists. They have to be on screen more than they are. They have to be a presence.
Right? Yeah. Like, they're so central to the entire story. It's just like, why aren't they anywhere? But yeah, I think that you're probably right. We're pulling the mask off the show here and saying, it was the budget. It was the budget all along. Yeah. That's the problem here.
Well, it's like you and I have been laughing about this scene for 2 years now, but I remember in season 1, it's like the budget apparently didn't even include regular human furniture because the entire UNSC military leadership is having their fucking meeting and they're just in a totally empty room standing in a circle. And it was like visually the funniest thing in the whole show. Like what you want in that scene is you want the big round table, the big circle table that they're all sitting around and there's like a hologram in the middle of the table that they're all looking at. You can see it in like those old Cold War era movies, the big military council, all sitting around together talking. And it's like, no, these guys, it's just like 10 guys in a room standing in a fucking circle.
Yeah. There's nothing around them for miles. Yeah.
But to the show's credit, it does have some moments where visuals are pretty solid. So we can talk about that a little bit as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Aside from those odd scenes and sets from the first season with the huge sterile boardroom environments and the wrong shade of purple on the Covenant cruisers, and the interior kind of looks a little weird there. But
in the first season, it was white, so this is an improvement.
Right. Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of things in the show, they look really great. I think the combat sequences definitely stand out as things that are just breathtaking. And a few that stand out to me this season. There was one in the first episode when Chief fights this swarm of invisible elites on that planet. I think that was just an awesome sequence. Like the Marines are just getting plucked out of thin air and thrown around, and he's just like, okay, I'm ready to go. I thought that was just a terrific sequence. I also really enjoyed all those. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And though, and I know elites can go invisible. That's just a thing they can do. But that is a way you work within your budget in a creative way. Because when the elites are invisible and you can't see them, you don't have to render them, but you can still do a cool action scene. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of a little bit more like the character has to think on their feet. And yeah, I thought that was a great sequence. And I really enjoyed the firefights on Reach as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And the space jumps with the Spartan 3s. Like that first one where Perez is going like out and it's all of her teammates are dying around her and like they're just getting evaporated, just destroyed. Like they're so outmatched. And then you realize it's a simulation. It's like, oh my God, my heart was pumping so fast. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me of the jump sequence with Kirk and Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness, where they have to jump from like the Enterprise to the big bad guy ship. Sort of a similar thing. But yeah, definitely, I like that sequence as well.
Yeah, I was getting some kind of like Saving Private Ryan vibes in a way of just like you're getting obliterated as the first landing force. You're not getting past here. Like you're just so outmatched and stuff. But yeah, I thought that those sequences were great, and I really do like the look of the Covenant when they are on screen. The Arbiter with his armor, it looks beautiful. Like I'm like, yes, you're the fucking Arbiter. I recognize that armor from a mile away.
Well, I didn't love the redesign of the Arbiter armor in this. Like, the game design is so iconic, but, like, maybe we'll get that later on. I don't know. Maybe he didn't have the real Arbiter armor. It's okay. It's all right.
Who knows? Well, now there's got to be another Arbiter because, he died at the end of this. So
he did die.
There'll be another one.
Come on, bring in Keith David, you cowards. He'll do it.
He's the man. We need him.
He is the man.
And I really like, it was just like within those final two episodes, the introduction of the Flood and the way that they were presented on screen, it really did feel like how they looked in the game, or at least they were moving in that direction, you know, like, you can think of like a handful of like Flood character designs and like, these are just the first humans to get infected. They're not going to look exactly like you want them to, but they'll get there. And like you could see it, like with the kind of spiny thing growing out of its back. At that one point, it was like, "Yep, that's the Flood. I recognize that."
Yeah, there were one or two of them where I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I knew, okay, when they're in the little like Forerunner lab thing, like you knew that was going to be the Flood, right, on the little disc.
Oh yeah,
it was like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh, this is that's the fucking Flood.
Yeah, what else could be in this tomb here, in this ancient Forerunner technology?
Exactly, yeah. But, the plot of this season, you got some notes about it being a little confusing at times, and I do kind of agree. So let's go through those bits.
Yes, there are some very confusing things about Season's 2 plot. I think one of the most confusing things, first off, is just McKee's character, because she was literally shot. In the first season. She died at the end of the first season. We all saw it. How is she alive, and why is that never explained? Like, even the characters in the show are like, I shot McKee. I know. Like, come on.
And this character is so weird to me because, like, whatever. I don't mind this edition, but this is another. I swear this is another budget motivated decision, because if they have a human bad guy who can talk to Master Chief and the other characters, they don't have to have an elite or a prophet. They can have the human doing it, and whatever. I think it's fine. I actually think the idea of a human who was rescued at a young age by the Covenant for some reason, I don't remember why they rescue her, but they did. I think that's actually kind of intriguing. I don't think they do much of anything interesting with it, but I think the premise is kind of neat. But why is she alive?
Like how and why and where, and just I have all the questions about that. And then one other thing that we absolutely need to mention is that John, at the end of season 1, Cortana, that was her whole purpose as like an AI, was just to take over the Spartan full throttle and just like inhabit their body, basically,
which I hated.
The perfect killing machine. Yeah, I don't really like it either. But she did that at the end of the first season, and we never get much of an explanation except like how they disconnected her from John and like how John recovered. It was just like we only get these overhead shots of like the surgery taking place of like, them extracting her or whatever. And it's like, come on, just give me something. I don't know. I don't know what that is that I'm asking for, but like, like it's just a total disconnect between like the final episode of season 1 and then the first episode of season 2. It's like, what happened?
Yeah. And maybe this is some of the stuff where they thought they'd learned their lessons and were like addressing complaints, because like I'm sure that we were not alone in really disliking that element of how Cortana was used and the fact that she assumed control of Chief's brain. So maybe they're like, okay, we're not going to do that. We're just going to move on. This was a bad idea. We'll just keep going. Sorry. But and like part of me is totally fine that we just skip over it, but it is weird when you end a season on a cliffhanger and the next season starts with that cliffhanger having been resolved off screen. Like, you could have shown the surgery at the beginning or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you could have given us something to communicate. Yes, it's been resolved, but in a more satisfying way.
Yeah.
I would say. Speaking of confusion, the Reach is so confusing to me in this show because the UNSC, Parangosky and Ackerson, they knew that the Covenant was going to invade eventually. Yeah, they were gonna come take it eventually, and Parangosky wanted to use that as an opportunity to get Cortana to McKee, so that McKee could then use Cortana to lead them to Halo. That was my understanding of why they allowed Reach to fall.
No, I think what happened, I don't think Parangosky planned on Cortana getting captured at all. I don't think that was part of the equation. I thought it was
Maybe. I don't know.
My interpretation from memory, at least, is like they ran simulations and were like, "Oh, Reach is fucked. We're just gonna like let it fall, and then we will use its fall as like a rallying cry, as propaganda to sort of inspire the rest of humanity or something."
Yeah. It was confusing, and then it's also like, why did you, like, your Spartans are your best fucking weapons, and you just leave them for dead? You take their armor, like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe it was explained very clearly in the show, but like, it's just, I don't know, it went over my head.
Yeah, I think it's just because they took out their pellets or whatever, so now they can't be controlled, and it's like that isn't interesting to me. I don't think that's that cool. And I do, like Oni has always been in the like background of Halo, right? Kind of doing their own shady thing for whatever. They're like space CIA. They're like the bad humans. But this is so stupid. But I really hated when they kept calling it O&I. I just don't like the way that sounds. Call it Oni. It sounds better. It doesn't matter at all. But I thought the relationship between Ackerson and his dad was kind of all right. I thought those scenes worked relatively well, and how he told his dad that Reach was going to fall and he was going to leave him behind, and his dad somehow remembered, even though he has dementia, I believe, or Alzheimer's or something. I thought that was a relatively touching subplot, and it humanizes the Ackerson character a little bit.
I thought
his redemption is a little unearned, but whatever, it's okay.
they'll do more with him in season 3 somehow. One logistical thing, because I don't want to complain about this too much for the plot's sake, because this is kind of something that you would find in the video games. So like they find the Forerunner tomb, and they take this little vial from the corpse of the Forerunner, and then they bring it to the lab, and that unleashes the flood spores.
Yes.
Into the into the mainstream, whatever. So why would the Forerunners even maintain a sample of the flood in the tomb? Like, why would you even have that, first of all? Like, why wouldn't you destroy all the spores? Like, it just doesn't make entire sense to me. But, yeah, maybe it's like you have a note here about it being a containment facility or something like that. So I see that.
Yeah, but I don't... And I don't remember exactly why it is the way it is in the games, because... it's been so long. Are the Forerunners all dead because they fired the Halos to kill the Flood? Is that why they're gone?
If I'm remembering right, yes. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess the Flood survived that somehow. But I don't remember how. It's been a long time. But maybe it was a containment facility or something. It didn't really bother me just because I was like, I liked the overall trajectory of that scene, like them discovering the Forerunner facility. I think it was weird that Quan stumbled upon the solution just like in her hiding spot in Soren's asteroid world, but whatever. It's fine. It's dumb. It doesn't matter, but
it's confusing. It's confusing, but it works, I guess.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that, like, one of the other things that I thought was confusing about the plot was Riz, the Spartan, exiting the fight, basically.
Yeah.
Like, the motivations and reasons were there, sure. Like, I will acknowledge that. But she is literally, at that time in the plot, Vanek's dead, Kai is off on her own doing something for Ackerson, so it's literally just John and Riz as the last two Spartans on Silver Team, and yeah, she's not really in any shape to fight right now, but she's like... you're on your own, John. I'm just gonna. This is the end of the road for me. I'm gonna call it a day, and I'm gonna live with these people. I know you want vengeance and all that, and you need a team, but that's not me.
I got the impression that her injuries were not going to get better. That was my understanding. Was that like she recognized that I am not going to heal, and I'm gonna go back into combat, and I'm gonna get owned like very quickly.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, she could be a liability to people. Yeah.
And I thought it was an extension of her conversation with the blind Spartan. What's it, Lewis? And I thought that worked fine. So, but yeah, it's like it felt weird, but also it's like she's making the right call. She's not going to survive.
Yeah, it is. It's totally the right call. Like all the reasonings there. It's just like, yeah, in the moment, if that was me, I'd be like, no, I need to finish this fight with the chief. But I understand. Yep. This is one small thing to complain about. I think the main thing that bothers me, though, is how the lore of the games, especially the main trilogy, the saga, the Bungie era, I should say, that a lot of the stuff there was just ignored or disrespected. Now, again, to play as devil's advocate, we've already talked about it. Budget concerns. This is live action, so you have there's a lot of CGI that you got to do to bring in these aliens and everything like that. Yeah. And it's also tough to adapt a story like Halo in a new and exciting way that isn't just a copy and paste remake of the original games. That's it can be kind of seen as lazy sometimes. And then also you have a main character who's always in a helmet, barely says any words, so it's like you do have kind of an uphill battle in some ways. But then you look at a series like The Last of Us, and you see just how perfectly they adapted that first video game into a complete season of television that was emotional, impactful, and powerful,
Yeah. But we also, like, to push back on the thing about the character in the helmet, we live in a post-Mandalorian world, a post-Dread 3D world. And I think both of us criticized the Mandalorian for how often he is in his helmet these days. And I may be misremembering our own criticism, but for me, I think a lot of it is like his character should have progressed past a point where he's wearing the helmet all the time. And here's my solution for Chief always being in the helmet and maybe not demonstrating a whole lot of personality outwardly. The games have this solution too, and that solution's name is Cortana. Cortana has a face and a voice and has like a very vibrant personality, and you keep them together. They play off of each other, and that's what makes the dynamic work. Is that even though Chief is stoic and in a lot of ways the player is stand-in, you always had Cortana there bouncing off of Chief, and you know that's what makes it work. But continue. It does kind of go in on its own path with the material. So there's a whole lot
it does.
Stuff.
But yeah, those are great points. But yeah, this series, the TV show, it does kind of ignore some key events from the source material. And I'm just going to name off a few here for us to kind of elaborate on that. So how Halo was discovered in the first place. So in the original game, if I'm remembering correctly, they just kind of stumbled across it.
Yeah.
It's not like an intentional search for the Halo.
It was
kind of like, oh, here we are.
It's a blind jump because okay, I'm gonna put on my Halo nerd hat. We're gonna go into the lore. They have a thing. I believe it's called the Cole Protocol. And what it is that no ship escaping an altercation with the Covenant can jump to Earth because they're trying to hide Earth. They're trying to keep it safe. So they have to do blind jumps. So when the Pillar of Autumn jumps away from Reach, they jump blindly into space and they stumble across the Halo. And I think I'm going to let you continue in a second, but I think that is way cooler than knowing about the fucking Halo the whole time and having visions of it and intentionally going there, because when you stumble upon it, it's this unknown thing. It's this weird construct in space. And then a whole lot of what makes that first game so magical is you're uncovering the mysteries of this weird thing in outer space. And then the series goes beyond that, obviously, but that is all lost now. You can't do that because you've chosen a different path, which isn't necessarily wrong, but you've lost a bit of that magic, you know? Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, it's like it does kind of take a little bit of away there. And like something like the introduction of the Flood, I like how they did it in the show. I'm not saying they did it in a poor way. Like it is kind of neat how they slowly feed it out in those final 2 episodes there. But like in the games, they discover like the Flood on, I think, the Halo installation. And it's like Captain Keyes or Admiral Keyes at the time, who's like one of the first victims to it. Like he uncovers it and he unleashes this this monstrosity, you know? And that's just not how they did it in the series here. And that's fine. But yeah, it is kind of ignoring where they came from. And on that note too, the fall of Reach, there's an entire video game about this, about how Reach fell step by step. And it's an amazing video game. I love Halo Reach. I've played that so many times, but like they did not even acknowledge Noble Team here. They didn't even like reference like those missions or that team of Spartans or anything like that. And they just did the entire fall of Reach in a very different way as well in the series here. So big deviation there. And to that end as well, the introduction of Cortana, this is going back to the first season, because in the video games, putting my nerd hat on too here with Halo Reach, it was Noble Six's job, who is your playable character in that game, to transport Cortana, like this AI that Halsey created, into the Pillar of Autumn for Master Chief to have. That is your final mission. And in this series, it's just kind of like, oh, Halsey created Cortana. Here she is. Isn't this great? La-di-da-di-da.
Yeah, well, she's created to assume control of a Spartan in this, and it's like that. But the like central relationship of Halo is Chief and Cortana. Like it's not, you've established this like weird distrust, and I want to talk more about them in a second. In positives, actually, shockingly, but it's like it's like why did you set that relationship up with that adversarial relationship for a whole season? Like, I don't know. And like when they start working together in this season, it doesn't really feel earned to me, even though I like it because that's what I want.
Yeah, it kind of felt like we were we were robbed of it from the first season, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, now we're finally getting some of it.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get more into that in a bit. Some other things that were not consistent.
Yeah.
Killing off characters too soon, which I referenced earlier. Admiral Keyes, like I said, he died to the flood in the original game, and in the show here, he dies with a bunch of jackals and a big fiery ball. That's how he dies.
Yeah, he unplugs the gas cord and he blows up, which
it's a cool death. I'm not ragging him for it, but it's like, no, he should have been alive. I think I would make the argument that he should have been a character moving forward, especially since they killed off, Vanek in that same episode too. I'm like, that's a lot of loss. And then just not including certain characters too, like Sergeant Major Johnson. Where is this man? I need him.
I know it's the exclusion of him has to be like for a reason, right? Like he's
maybe it's like a season 3 thing.
Maybe, but like he's one of the most popular characters in the games. It's weird that he's not here, and we're instead spending time with like Soren and his wife and Quan.
Yep.
And who else do we spend time with?
And their little kid. And
their little kid, and we get Halsey in the prison talking to the girl over and over again.
Who keeps dying over and over again.
Yeah, which like I thought the payoff for that was all right. It was like Ackerson's sister who was in the Spartan program. It's like, okay, that's kind of cool. So not to rag on that too much specifically, but I think in terms of, and like I said earlier, and like we've always said, you can change things in adaptation. That is fine and acceptable, but I think they've chosen to give us the worst of both worlds in regards to this adaptation because they very clearly do not want to do the story of the games. I think that's apparent at this point. But they also want the iconic imagery and maybe the legitimacy of having Master Chief and Cortana and Dr. Halsey and Keyes to a lesser extent. So I think you get like just enough of what you recognize and want to see that you're like, well, then just give it to me. Like, give me some of the stuff that made me fall in love with this series, and they don't want to provide that. So if you don't want to do that, then do something else. Tell either like at least loosely adapt the games or go in a totally different direction and have your own cast of characters on a different adventure in the Halo universe. Halo ODST did that. You can do that very successfully and make something cool. But they didn't want to do that either. So I don't really understand what this weird, like, treading the middle ground is because it makes it almost for nobody. And it's very frustrating. But we can transition into things we liked, I think, now at this point. It's only fair.
Absolutely.
But let's start us off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, like I said earlier, I really do appreciate the visuals. One of the things that I also really liked was the superior technology of the Covenant. That was something that I think sometimes I felt like the UNSC in the games was a little bit too well matched in some regards to them. Like they were definitely, I think it was better in like probably the second Halo game when they're attacking Earth and everything like that. Like that stuff is like, that really sets the tone of, oh my God, we are outmatched here. And I think the show did a really great job of showing just how outmatched humanity is. Like in that finale, when the UNSC fleet shows up and they just get obliterated instantly. They're like, yeah, we're going to send some help to that ship over there. And then the laser just destroys that main ship. It's like, okay, that's satisfying. And I really enjoyed that. And I liked the Arbiter and his mission with McKee. I don't think that it was effectively communicated like who he is or what he is in the show, but because you and I played the games, we both know a lot about the Arbiter. And for fans of the game who already know about that stuff about his background and like he's this kind of outcast of society who's like charged with these missions to redeem himself for some
a suicide mission
act.
to redeem yourself.
It's just suicide missions. just like it's religious redemption. And I thought that was really cool to just see him trying to navigate that of like, I want to be redeemed and I'm going to do it. I'm going to follow this woman there and I'm going to defend her. I thought that was a very cool part of the season.
Yeah. I thought that was cool. I do think maybe they're missing a trick by having McKee sort of be the like blessed one who is misleading these religious fanatics, as opposed to the hierarchs, the prophets, who we don't see at all in season 2. I don't think.
Yeah, they're just
we saw them a little bit in season 1, but I think that's a really cool part of the games is the great journey and what the Covenant wants, which they want something different from the Halo in this. Like in the games, they think the Halo is like activating the Halo takes them on the great journey to wherever they want to go, but in reality, it just like kills everything because it's a weapon to eradicate the flood by killing all of its food. Is that going to be part of the Halos in the show? I don't know.
Maybe we'll see. Yeah, I thought one of the other great parts that I liked about season 2 here was actually a very lesser character named Lewis 036. He's the blind albino former Spartan that really he really only interacts with Riz, and that is kind of, I think, the catalyst for her to really start rethinking, okay, do I want to be a Spartan? Should I continue to be a Spartan? And is there more to life than just fighting? Because I thought he had a very beautiful story. He'd found fulfillment in, in his blindness with his partner in this domestic life. And I appreciated that introduction because I think it added more context to the Spartan program on the one side. But I also really like his character because of the emotional weight that he added to the fall of Reach.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I got a fire truck going by right now, so if you hear that, sorry. But
it's all good.
In the fall of Reach, Riz discovers that Lewis's partner died in one of the firefights, and Lewis, he didn't see it because he's blind, and she has to communicate this to him, and that was probably one of the few moments in the entire show where I was tearing up. I was emotionally connected with these characters, and then he goes off and goes kamikaze on this wraith, this wraith that's coming up, and I thought that was just such a strong moment in the show.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like it adds the human element to Reach, which I think is very important because you want, as a writer, if it's meant to fall, you want us to care about it before it falls. And just the added element that him not even realizing his husband has died for a little bit because he's just blind and couldn't see, makes it so much more tragic. And then it's like, when he realized that, he's like, okay, fuck it. What am I doing? Yeah. And he just goes and sacrifices himself. Yeah, I thought that was a great character, and I loved the little like date night scene where they invite her in, and his husband or boyfriend is like, don't ignore him. He said it's date night, but like his idea of date night is like we cook and then he falls asleep while I clean the dishes, and then like later in the scene he's like passed the fuck out on the couch. It was cute.
Yeah, right.
Like
it was just so emotional. Yeah, I definitely felt for them there, and I think one of the other great characters in this season 2 is also Corporal Perez.
Yes. One of my main positives on the season is this character and her subplot. I actually think this is the platonic ideal of how to expand a video game story like Halo's into a TV show that needs a little bit more going on than the game's narrative maybe could offer, because it felt like a perfectly organic arc to include. Like, she's just a normal Marine, and she gets rescued by Chief, and she sort of gets swept up into his orbit, and then she loses everything, all of her family and friends on Reach, and then she responds to, becoming a new type of soldier. She goes into the Spartan 3 program, even though, I kind of wish she had become an ODST instead. That would have been cool to see some ODSTs, and also... God, this is so annoying, nerdy of me, but the Spartan 3s were a different fucking thing. They were different. They existed on Reach. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's fine. But I wish she was an ODST just because I wanted to see them be ODSTs. these guys were like what Spartan 4s are in Halo 4 and 5. They're just like normal people who get Spartan armor. Whatever. It's not important. I'm nitpicking. But I liked this character's arc a lot, and I think this is how you organically expand the Halo mythos. It's like, as far as I know, this is a totally original character to the show, and she felt like she was plucked straight out of the universe of the games. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, she was awesome. I thought she was such a great addition, and just I think she had some really powerful acting in this show too. Out of everyone, like just grappling with that trauma of like her missions, and then also the loss of her family and friends. Like just this all these insane events going on around her. I thought that she was just chef's kiss. She was great.
Yeah, and I also really liked the scene of just Cortana unlocking all of those doors for Chief, and keeping the other doors locked so people couldn't get to him. It's a small thing, but it's the one scene where I actually felt the dynamic between the two of them is even allowed to exist. It's like the central relationship in the whole video game series, and we basically just get this one little scene of like getting to have it, and it was great. And it's awesome.
Give me more of it.
Yeah, this is kind of the fun part of Halo, is them playing off of each other and helping each other out. It was cool.
I really liked that sequence too. I thought it was good comedic levity in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me pose a thought experiment to you here. Let's assume that budget isn't really a factor here.
Okay.
For this thought, because I think if you take into budget consideration, it just kind of immediately pushes this out of the way. But because the Arbiter in the Halo games is a playable character in the second and third games, do you think it would have worked better in this series if they just ditched McKee's character altogether and just made the Arbiter our sole perspective into the Covenant?
Yes, I do.
Yes, of course.
I don't hate McKee. I think she's fine, but again, I think she is there primarily because of the budget, and I'm not. I think they want to like play coy with her motivations and whatever, but I don't really understand where she aligns at this point and what her relationship is with Chief. It's very romantic, at least in season 1, inappropriately so, because she was a POW, but that's a different thing. That's not allowed, by the way. Prisoners cannot sleep with POWs. That's not that's illegal. Not the point of this, but it's like, well, I kind of like the romantic flirtatiousness between Chief and Cortana. That's kind of the main central thing here. So it's like, is it a love triangle that they're going for, or is she secretly with the Covenant and trying to trick Chief, or just surviving and trying to escape the Covenant? I don't really know, which is fine. But yes, the Arbiter, better. The Arbiter's good.
He would have been. He's great.
Yeah, his storyline in Halo 2 especially is such a great arc. Like, he's the disgraced commander from the first game who is given the task of being the Arbiter and going to slay this heretic, and in doing so realizes that the entirety of what the hierarchs preach to the Covenant is all a lie, and he turns face and joins up with Sergeant Johnson and humanity, and then he and Chief become like battle bros in the third game, and it's great. It's cool, and I hope we get some approximation of that in the show at some point. But
I agree, yeah. He's got such a great arc, and he's such a great character, and like if they can get that voice actor in there too, that's just beautiful. I do understand why they had McKee. She's kind of this, but the Arbiter is kind of the counterbalance to Chief in the games as well. Like, I think that they work very well together. And in the show, they're kind of positioning McKee more as that counterbalance to Chief, and since they're both, they have that kind of Forerunner descendant DNA. They have that kind of ability to unlock the Halo and the puzzles there. So it's like, I understand what her purpose is and why she's there. She's kind of supposed to be that second piece of the puzzle there, but yeah, she's just kind of like all in on anarchy at this point. Yeah. At least that was my understanding.
That was the main element of like Chief's character in the later games that I really didn't like, that like he's like the special human now who is like uniquely special, whereas at least back in the day, my interpretation of it was not that Chief was special, it was just that humanity is the descendants of the Forerunners. Like, Forerunners were ancient humans, so humans can unlock all their shit because they're the same species. And that seems to have changed in recent years. Like, the Forerunners are something different, kind of. I don't know. But, yeah, and, like, swinging back to negatives for a little bit, like, I just continue to really not care about anything related to Quan, Soren, or Soren's family. Like, it's fine. I get it. They're trying to broaden the story or whatever. The characters are okay, I guess. But I've never connected with them, and they feel like they're in an entirely different universe from the rest of the story for the most part. And I wouldn't mind it so much if there weren't like characters from the games that are not in the show that I want to see, or storylines from the games that I want to see that we are instead spending on like Soren's wife trying to outsmart Soren's crew and get on the ship. It's like, I don't fucking care. I don't care about this.
Yeah, I agree. They're definitely kind of the B plot of the story, and it is kind of tough to make me care about them and find them interesting. Like, I wish I had an idea on how to make it better, because, you know, we do talk about, like, yeah, it's okay to expand and explore, push new boundaries, and you don't have to adapt everything word for word, but, you know, these characters, it's just, I don't know, it's just really hard to connect with them, and I think it is kind of how Quan was written in the first season. I think she just comes off a little, I don't know, just not in a great light in the first season. So I think that just kind of poisoned my perception of her, but maybe that's just me.
Well, because it almost felt like she was the main character of a lot of season one in a lot of ways. But what she's doing and her interest in this season are totally different from what was happening in season one. Like, I guess she was like a chosen one of some sort for her planet, from what I remember, and I guess she just decided not to do that. I don't know. But whatever.
It's confusing.
It's fucking fine. It's like, and I don't want to like shit on that character too much because she became the focal point for all the like bigots who shit on the show. And that's not us, and that's not what we're about. And it's just like, I don't understand what the writing motivation for that whole arc is. And any of this, I also just like, I don't know. I rolled my eyes a little bit when they go to the Spartan trial thing at the end, and it's like, we had to do this all night. It was called Thermopylae, and it's like, okay, because the 300 Spartans in Greece. I get it. It's like fucking Thermopylae. They held off the Persians, and you held off the mass guys all night. Okay, I don't know why that made me roll my eyes. Like, Halo has always been kind of fucking on the nose and goofy and esoteric, but I was like, okay, Thermopylae.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, come on, guys.
Here's my thought experiment. I think the fall of Reach should have been the entire back half of the season. We had, like you said earlier, there was a whole game about just that. And I think the way they adapt it in the show, while it has some of the most effective scenes in the series, it's very quick, and it feels like the entire fall of Reach happens along one street.
That's
true. Again, I know, budget. Although I did like the little shopkeeper lady who's like, I'm not going to leave all this stuff here that I've collected for years or whatever. Like, that was kind of a neat little bit of humanity added in there. But, okay. First 4 episodes of season 2, I think what they should do instead of what they did is, well, they kind of did this, but focus on like developing a few groups of soldiers, Spartans, in addition to Chief's group, and then some civilians as well. And then have the second half of the season, like from episode 4, which was called Reach, onward, is all on Reach. And they're trying to survive and escape Reach. And you see some of the characters we've gotten to know in the first half of the season not make it. Maybe even throw in Noble Team, you know? I think that would have been a really compelling season. Because, like, in the game, remember, there's, like, the first half where you're kind of fighting back and winning, and then George dies. And then he dies thinking that like you saved the planet, and then the next scene, like the real invasion happens, and then all the rest of the game is just like mop up and trying to get out of there. And some stuff like that, because I remember it really affected me when I first played the game in high school. Because it's like there's a lot of dramatic buildup to George's death. He has this big farewell, he gives a little speech, and he shoves you off the ship. And then the next death is Kat, I think her name is. And y'all are all just like running down the street, and then she gets shot in the face and dies. And it's so blunt and to the point. And it's like, oh my God, like the dynamic has changed, and you really feel that. And they're just, I don't know. I feel like it was over too quickly, and the Reach episode was mostly solid, but I just felt like it was kind of over and done with, you know?
I agree. Yeah, it felt kind of rushed. Yeah, they could even have done like a 2-episode arc of Reach. I think that would have been perfect. But yeah, I liked what you're thinking there of like bring a noble team, expand, because like they've always like I feel like, but even before the game Reach came out, it feels like they really did talk about that as a big pivotal turning point in the war. In the games they were like, oh yeah, when Reach fell, everything changed. And and this episode
it's like remember Reach is the like battle cry that they do a lot in the game. And like they wrote a whole fucking book about it. There's a novel called The Fall of Reach, which apparently is very different than the game story, and people were upset at the game for not following the book more, but whatever, I don't know. And also I forgot what I was gonna say. Never mind. But keeping the Spartans out of their armor on the Reach battle was kind of lame. I don't know. I understand budget again, and also you're probably trying to build up tension by, it's like, oh, depower them, keep them out of their armor. But it's like, I'm normally on board with that. I'm normally on board of taking the hero's tool sets away from them. I think a great example of this working is Iron Man 3, where his suit is breaking down the entire movie, and he's forced to like rely on different versions and like partial suits and stuff. I think that works really well. I don't know if Halo is the best vehicle for that storytelling device, because there is a little bit of power fantasy in the storytelling of this franchise. But yeah, I don't know. That's like one thing I wish they would have done. And also a final thought is, if the show is allowed to continue, like if enough people watched it to justify a third season, I would like to see more of the Covenant, and more of the religious themes from the games included. Like I mentioned, that Arbiter storyline is one of the coolest parts of the game. And also Halo 3 literally has 2 consecutive missions called the Ark and the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant. And like religion is a big part of this story. And it's not like it's kind of present. Like Perez and Chief have a conversation in the church. There's a little bit of religious stuff going on, but it's it's kind of important to the DNA of this series, and I think it should be touched on a little bit more. And like,
I agree. Well, yeah, and I mean, just the entire Covenant, they're all fanatics. They're religious radicals, and that's kind of their whole deal. And so, yeah, I agree. I would like to see more kind of that religious arc there. And yeah, there's so many arcs from the game that they didn't even really touch in here. Like, it is kind of part of that Arbiter arc, but you know, where the brutes basically take over for the elites as like the guard. Like, it's kind of like they're supplanting the elites in the structure of the Covenant, and I thought that was really cool. And then you have the whole civil war within the Covenant structure too, which is just awesome. And that's why the elites eventually join your side against the Covenant, and maybe that's something for the future. I would like to see that.
But like we said, there's potential. They can right the ship. Maybe it'll be a different ship. But I also thought it was weird that Miranda Keyes is like not in the show until the very end. And then also that Cortana is a bit player until the very end. Like it's like screen real estate. We're spending all this time with these other characters, these OCs for the show. Soren isn't an OC, I don't think. I think he's from a book or something. But like, we're doing that at the expense of other characters who, like, I thought it was a great idea to have Miranda and Jacob Keyes in season 1, like, interacting with each other, because I'm like, oh, this is cool. We're building up their relationship, and so we'll feel it more when Keyes dies on Halo, or on Reach, which it kind of hit, kind of didn't. I don't know, but yeah, it's whatever. Final thoughts for me. It's like, I want it to be good, man. I want to like it. And if you're a Halo showrunner and you're watching this for some reason, please do this for me. If you get to this point in the story, do the thing from Halo 2 where Master Chief goes to High Charity and play the fucking Breaking Benjamin song. It's like one of my favorite parts of Halo 2.
Yes!
It's so cool. And in the remaster, the 10-year anniversary, I guess they didn't want to pay for the fucking license for the song again because it's not there.
We were robbed.
I was playing the whole game, looking forward to that moment, and I get into High Charity, and the fucking bells didn't ring, and I did not hear Blow Me Away by Breaking Benjamin, and I was very sad.
God damn it. What the fuck?
Any final thoughts on Halo Season 2?
I'll just say I agree with you that, yes, there's potential. It can be saved if they're doing it Season 3. Yeah, I think it's just, you could chalk it up to just budget and missed opportunities, but I think budget is the culprit all along. But yeah, if you're looking for like a Halo show that's like authentic to like the lore, this probably isn't that. But if you want something that's just cool violence, there's some good scenes in this show, and it's kind of worthwhile for that.
Yeah, there are a couple good parts. All right, let's transition into some other stuff. Niles, what have you been watching, reading, playing, etc. the last couple weeks?
Yeah, we rewatched Fantastic Mr. Fox the other weekend, the 2009 Wes Anderson movie. Love that one. I just love Wes Anderson too. We talked about him on this podcast before. I just love his use of color, and he's got these very unique stories. And yeah, I just wish more of his stuff was on streaming for free, unfortunately. Because I'm like, I want to watch the Royal Tenenbaums or the Grand Budapest Hotel. It's like, nope, gotta pay for it wherever I go, unfortunately. But love that movie. Love stop motion animation like that. He does a really good job with it. Continuing on with Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, as well. God, what did we just watch? We watched an episode in India, I think, the other night.
Cool.
God, I can't remember where else we've been, but it was Tokyo. Yeah, we the last episode we saw was in Tokyo, and that was a really cool one. Yeah, Anthony Bourdain, what an awesome dude. We have also been watching RuPaul's Drag Race, season 16. Coming down to the final few episodes here. This next one is kind of the final 4 queens in the final competition, and we'll see if we have a final 3 or a final 4.
Cool.
Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, I'm really liking it. It's a good season. I really want Saphira to win. Yeah, you have no idea who that is, Dom, but that's fine.
I don't.
Also watching Invincible, staying up to date on that. That is such a phenomenal show, and I can't wait to talk about it with you in more detail. And I picked back up The Sopranos the other weekend too, and I finished out season 4. It's an amazing show. I really like it. It is just kind of one of those shows where it's like, if you drop off of it, you need to rewatch the last episode that you watched, or else you're going to be so lost. You can't just jump right back in with the next episode. But it's so amazing. Yeah, really, really, really enjoying that. But what about you, Dylan? What have you been up to lately?
I am carrying on reading the Cryptonomicon. I'm almost halfway through it now.
Nice.
Also, continuing to watch Shogun and loving that. Shogun is awesome. If y'all haven't watched it yet, you got to do it. And I played a bit more of the Final Fantasy VII remake, the first remake. It's fun. It's cool. I've been like, I finished Baldur's Gate 3, and ever since then I've been like floundering for a new like big game to dive into, and 7 remake. I think it's going to be one of them. I also went to go see Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire. It was some dumb fun, man. You know. It was very, you know, there was some schlock, and I had a good time. There's one part where you know, in the trailer, there's the mini Kong, right? The smaller ape.
Yeah.
So there's a part where a bunch of other giant apes are attacking Kong, and he grabs mini Kong by the foot and uses him as a weapon against the other apes. It's so fucking funny. It's so fucking funny.
No fucking way. Oh my god.
It was like I said in our episode on Godzilla versus Kong many years ago. It delivered exactly what it promised, and it did nothing more. It was fine.
That's good.
Yeah. And continuing to watch Invincible, like you, going to watch the finale later tonight. And viewers, that will be our next episode. So excited to see how that all pans out. I loved the little meta joke in the last episode about the like cutting corners on animation.
So good. Oh, right from the comics.
Mm-hmm. And I have been playing Fallout New Vegas. So I've been trying to play Fallout New Vegas for a long time. For whatever reason, it crashes on my computer. Like hard crashes either on startup or on loading the game. Apparently the game has a problem with corrupted save files. So I have this game on Steam, on Epic Games, and on Game Pass on PC. It works on none of them. But it is working on Game Pass on my Xbox. So I'm playing it there, and it's working, and it's amazing so far. I'm about like 5 hours in. I'm very not far into it, but it's great. And lastly, I rewatched Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And I'm not going to talk about that much because we have our annual Star Wars Trilogy Rewind coming out on May the 4th of this year, where Niles and I will be talking about all 3 of the prequels in a sit-down, in-person discussion. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's going to be great. Yeah.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. But that's it. That's all I've been doing. And now it's time for the end of the show. So thank you all so much for watching and or listening. We really appreciate it. It helps us keep in spirits to keep doing this. I was going to say it helps us keep the lights on, but it doesn't because we don't make money. But we love doing this, and we'll be back in 2 weeks or a week and a half or whatever for Invincible Season 2. And until then, Niles, where can people find you online?
People can follow me on Instagram at NilesGotNoStyles. Dylan, what about you? Where can people follow you online?
People can follow me on Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at DDayMovies, on YouTube at DDayMovies, on Twitch at DDay_movies. You can find both of us here at Play, Pause, Rewind on your podcast platform of choice, as well as on YouTube. You can also find us on our second channel, Play, Pause, Rewind Videos, as well as TikTok at Play, Pause, Rewind _podcast. Yeah. Stay tuned for that. If you like this, please like and subscribe. Share it with your friends and family. We want to reach more people so more people can enjoy our awesome voices and faces. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.